News a fly like when low pressure bridge dip on the Pacific. Me a come from out a shop there. And me hear say cabbage daughter come. Lettuce. Alive. How the little girl come back now? Me hear say she come and a create bangarang. Say, she no feel like she a cabbage daughter. She have a pop chow. Story bust like when pipe bust down a river, me no river. Talk to me. Me hear say the young woman come and say, she a go do a DNA test. And a 876 DNA test I do it. So how them a go do DNA and cabbage dead? Based on what me understand, me here say, she can do a relationship DNA testing with the same company there. So, how that go now? Relationship DNA testing at one time, then test for your family member. Plus, any picking you have and see if you are them related without you there in here. Yes, master.
Look here.
I turn it by the little girl daddy.
I know cabbage nor pop chow bikini.
When time cabbage gonna farm work, dietine make turnip a turn in a bed. And that's why turnip and cabbage couldn't agree. That's why the little girl born with the special osos color. Me aga maya to ka. Dema 876 DNA test have to go sort out that.
You know, say.
Every Royal is one of my favorites.
Listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Social media.
Every now and again, when I'm frustrated with the behavior on TikTok, every Royal comes up and I'm like, all right, it's not so bad.
Wow. Find out what I got pumpkin belly in keeping with the vegetable theme. Yeah. I gotta tell you, yeah.
Morning to everyone, especially every Royal and his followers. Welcome back to Sunrise. At the beginning of 2025, 876 DNA Test published their annual adversity report, which shows levels of paternity fraud and paternity misallocation that they have observed from their operations in 2024. And so this morning, CEO of 876 DNA Test, Taryn Dewar, joins us to shed some light on what's really been happening. Welcome to the show, Taryn.
Thank you.
Lovely. You're at the right place. Well, I know there are people looking and wondering, okay, so what's the difference, Taryn, between DNA fraud or paternity fraud and paternity misallocation?
Great question. So the core of the word fraud tells you the difference. So fraud is when somebody knows
the mens rea is there.
Yes, yes, the mens rea is there, right? Where they know and they deliberately assign parentage to the wrong father. And the paternity misallocation is when they're genuinely not sure. They're not sure of the conception, data conception. You may have had two sexual encounters in close proximity to each other. You're not genuinely sure. So they assign parentage to the person who is most convenient, the person who they're with the most.
Yeah. And so, I mean, rather than make a statement of intent where you cannot prove intent, you would maybe just say misallocation.
Yes.
Now, there are many who would suggest that the statistics as it relates to paternity misallocation are skewed towards persons who may have questions surrounding paternity. So it's not necessarily an indicator of what applies in terms of general allocation in the population. Would you agree?
Yes, we do. So we didn't set out to do a national study. All right? So 876 DNA Tests has 64 locations in all 14 parishes and most major towns. So this data that you're seeing is coming from our operation. So the data is essentially saying that people who has doubts and sought confirmation through a DNA test from 876 DNA Tests as the country's leading DNA testing company, almost 50% of them confirm their doubt that they're not biologically related.
Right.
That's what it's actually.
So the reason for the doubt was genuine, but the reason of the doubt pre-existed.
Yes, sir.
Who typically is coming to do a DNA test? Many people would say, the man never get suspicious. Is it men who typically come and request a DNA test?
Another solid question here, Dennis. So 70% of calls and inquiries that we get for DNA testing come from women. So the mother of the father who has doubt, the father's sister or new girlfriends, they are the ones who are triggering calls. And then we also see a number of calls coming from women who have been accused of paternity fraud who are defending themselves.
Right, or clear their name.
Or clear their name, right? About 30% of the calls come from men.
Yeah.
So that is what we're seeing.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's counter to the conventional wisdom now
Yes.
out there, which is why it's important to look at the numbers.
Very important to look at it. I mean, we don't have the luxury of talking about this thing sensationally. We have access to too much data.
Empirical data, yeah. So a lot of people, Taran, are asking, you know, the question has arisen as to whether Jamaica should have mandatory DNA testing. Do we have, based on your involvement in the space, do we have the scope to have mandatory DNA testing in Jamaica?
I don't think we have the infrastructure as yet, but I think the infrastructure could be put in place. But our position on it is that Jamaica is not yet ready for mandatory DNA testing.
Why not?
So I don't think the Jamaican population has demonstrated the maturity of dealing with conflict. Right? And adverse result triggers a flurry of emotions, right? So everybody who does a DNA test with 876 DNA test has free access to counseling and mediation support. We pay for it, right? And then we ask everybody who gets an adverse result, we trigger a wellness call within 36 hours of them getting their results, right? So if we cannot consider as a policy position mandatory DNA testing without a supported position, right?
Without more. So you can't just say mandatory and leave it there.
No.
But let me ask you though, Taran, because there are some persons who want to do a DNA test, but they don't know what it entails or how it's done.
They maybe watch it on TV and see somebody wipe a cotton swab in the mouth or in the ear.
How exactly is it done at 876 DNA test?
So there are 3 ways you can get a DNA test with us, right? You can either come into one of our 64 facilities. You can either use one of our home DNA testing kits, like this.
Wow.
And you order one online.
Home DNA testing kits?
Yes, order one online or in a pharmacy near you, and you do 10 to 15 swabs in your mouth and return the samples to us. Or you request our mobile lab team.
So you're swabbing yourself and the person? And
the person you're testing, right? 10 to 15 swabs on either side of the mouth. And that is the general way. So most DNA tests, I'm going to say 98% of DNA tests that we do are what we call a buccal swab, and that is just a fancy name for
your
mouth swab, right? And on the inside of your cheek is rich in epithelial cells, skin cells, and what we're doing is swabbing to assess the DNA connection between one party and the next. So that is really how it's done.
Can it be done by hair?
Yes. So we do that. We do a lot of those tests.
Like you take a brush.
And it's not generally the strand of the hair. So we like to educate people. It's really the bulb or the root, as people call it, right?
Yes.
So we do what we call an unusual or discrete sample test. So people can do or have done DNA tests on other parties without their permission or knowledge using discrete sample. Here, 5 to 10 toe or fingernail clippings, ears, wax, bloody tissue. We've seen people giving kids chewing gum and carry it to us. Toothbrush is a popular one.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and we test that against mouth swab.
I'm curious because you, by virtue of what you do, you're a big collector of very personal data. And there are persons who may be concerned about data privacy. They might not want to go into a into discount pharmacy and say, hey, sell me a DNA test. I mean, what are the checks and balances that you put in place to protect people's privacy in terms of acquiring the test, and once the test is done, to separate or to preserve anonymity possibly, and then once you have the data, to protect it in terms of how you store it?
Perfect. That's an excellent question. I'm glad you asked it. So we have 3 pillars. Our mission to educate the public about DNA testing, to make it more accessible, and to make it more affordable, right? All of that is undergirded by privacy and confidentiality. So our data are stored under 2-factor authentication, 6-key 2-factor authentication. So the systems are not necessarily linked to each other. So if you access one system, because you need 2 or 3 systems to put together the entire story, and we've separated them with a wall in between them and restrict the access to it. Privacy and confidentiality is very important. So these kits are also designed, because this is a branded kit, right? We also have designed them for them to go discreet. You don't have nothing on it.
Yes.
Right? So, yes, ma'am. So we thought about it because the business was built from feedback by Jamaicans. You know? So a lot of doctors and a lot of people told us what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And we've built those things. And we continue to like assess the feedback loop and make the adjustments as necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where can we get more information about 876 DNA testing? You know, you said you have 64 locations in 14 parishes all across the length and breadth of Jamaica. Persons watching, because you also serve the diaspora.
Yes.
So persons in the diaspora can also access 876 DNA tests?
And we do a lot of those tests. We call them international DNA tests. So if you're in the United States, all we need is your zip code. We can identify a partner facility that is within 20 minutes of you. We also do the same thing for Canadian and UK residents. And then,
Which is important for, very often for filing purposes.
so what we're learning is that the filing and immigration process, a leaked US cable said 1 in 10 of those results come back negative, right? It's a very expensive process. So what we're seeing overseas our diaspora people doing, they're doing up a personal DNA test before they invest thousands of US dollars, which is very smart.
Yes.
And we're seeing a number of adverse results in that case, so they saved time and money.
Many
Gotcha.
people find out that
Right
their
at the
child
embassy.
is not their child
Through that.
through the
Yeah.
filing
You
process.
go to the embassy in one car as one happy family and you leave broken. That's what we see.
Wow.
So we've seen people, taking the step to go and figure it out
before you
So
just-
you're on social media, so they can find you.
at 876 DNA Tests on Instagram, or if you want a more thorough review of us, just go to www.876DNAtest.com. Or you can just simply call or WhatsApp us. Just look on your phone and dial 876 DNA Test and it will come to us.
You've thought about everything, Teron. I got to tell you, absolutely amazing to you and your team. Thank you so very much. And thanks for this very innovative way of conducting, a very serious matter, which is near and dear to a lot of people. And people ought to know, right?
Yes.
So thank you so much for making it available at our fingertips, because before now, it just seemed like something that was so far away and so aloof and so,
Yes.
hidden in a one place, or one part where you can't access it if you don't have certain money.
Right.
So I'm very happy that 876 DNA test is in the marketplace, serving both persons here and abroad. So thank you so very much. Our guest this morning has been Teron Dewar, CEO of 876 DNA Test. So from jacket to the importance of a prenup, look here, man, is a lot going on this morning. We have a lot to distill. Law and Order JA is up next on the flip side. Prenup, to sign or not to sign? That is the question. We'll be right back. It still and always is Sunrise.